Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world right now. This is Amrys Wang of the Raw Entrepreneur PAWDX Live on Mindvalley. Thank you for joining us for our monthly Conscious Caregiving Circle for Animals, where we meet every first Thursday of the month to share our thoughts on what it means to be a conscious caregiver for our animals. I am blessed to have with me 5 amazing ladies from Canada, the founder of Adored Beast Apothecary and kick-ass homeopath and trailblazer for the advancement of holistic pet care, Julianne Lee. As a practitioner, teacher, and consultant, she has expanded the world of animal wellness, both reclaiming and scientifically evolving the time-honored common sense practice of nature-based animal healthcare. She has been the owner and practitioner of some of the busiest and long-standing holistic veterinary hospitals and clinics in North America, instructor at the College of Animal Homeopathic Medicine, lecturer for the American Homeopathic Veterinary Association, British Homeopathic Veterinary Surgeons Association, and many, many more over the last 20 years. Julianne Lee's goal has never changed: to provide people with the knowledge and power to choose holistic healing from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail. From the UK, the founder of Kachina Canine, Dr. Isla Fishburn. Her focus is on ecosystem health from the individual level up. She combines science with indigenous wisdom to better the life of dogs in all aspects of their wellness, including how the wellness state of a dog's human can affect the dog. Isla focuses on deepening the connection of a human to live intuitively so that their dog will operate from a place of energetic alignment. Isla combines her knowledge as a zoologist, conservation biologist, shamanic practitioner, and wolf handler to bring teachings about how to improve the emotional, physical, spiritual, nutritional, and mental state of a dog. She is deeply focused on teaching and exploring the importance of vibrational health and living from a place of authenticity. From the United States, Dr. Josie Bjerg, who is a licensed vet who specializes in traditional Chinese veterinary medicine from among other healing modalities. She received a BA in biology from the University of Colorado in 1989 with an emphasis in neurology. She attended veterinary school with the intention of practicing integrative veterinary medicine and earned her DVM degree from the University of Wisconsin in 1998. She received her acupuncture certification from the Qi Institute of Traditional Chinese Veterinary Medicine in 2001 and continues to both study and teach there. She has a thriving holistic house call practice in South Florida going on 20 years and is a lifelong student of the healing arts, from herbs to oils to energy to stones, integrating ancient knowledge and modern medicine to help her patients live longer, healthier, happier lives. Also, from the US, Dr. Emily Taylor Juncker, who is a veterinary clinical herbalist and is the integrative medicine service within the Veterinary Rehabilitation Hospital at Quartet in Cary, North Carolina. She received her DVM from Auburn University College of Veterinary Medicine in 2013. During her time at Auburn, Dr. Juncker created a student club to foster relationships with holistic veterinary practitioners and herbalists and pursued specific coursework focusing on alternative modalities. She studied with Dr. Barbara Fougere, author of the Veterinary Herbal Medicine textbook, as well as Susan Weed, a leader in holistic health and herbal knowledge. She completed a comprehensive certification course in Western Veterinary Herbal Medicine through Purple Moon Herbs and Studies in 2019. Dr. Juncker now offers complementary care, utilizing a holistic approach to pet health, integrating a biologically appropriate diet, herbs and supplements, along with conventional pharmaceuticals and diagnostics. She also explores topics of holistic health more broadly on her blog and website, holisticmumvet.com. And finally, also from Canada, my personal favorite person from Adored Beast Apothecary, Stephanie B, who has the biggest heart and compassion in making sure we are all connected. So that was a really long intro because all these ladies are like super amazing, okay? And I have to acknowledge all of them. I can't show any favoritism or else I'll be dead, okay? So, oops, that was a big boo-boo. Anyway, today's topic is a sensitive one, but we hope that we'll make it welcoming. It's about death. It is a part of life cycle, and yet many people are afraid to talk about it. Today, in this safe circle, we will share our thoughts and experience with death to help shine a light and encourage our listeners to look at death in a more conscious way. Julianne, would you like to share your thoughts on this now?
Well, for anyone that knows me, and not a lot of people out there probably do, these guys do, I don't prepare a lot for stuff, so the majority of what I'm going to talk about is just what comes to mind. And I think that from a death perspective with animals, because that's what I can speak to stronger than anything else. At my practice, at my vet hospital in Vancouver, I think what I learned the most from death, I always look at what I'm learning and not what I'm teaching. So, and when I learn something and what my goal and my hope is that then I can teach that from a personal perspective, because we all, everybody sitting here has their own personal perspective. And when you group that together, it becomes a really wonderful connected piece of knowledge, right? So I think the first thing that came to mind when with death, and especially with me, because I grew up on a rescue, so I saw a lot of animal death as a child, helping my mom, and I often wondered why I never saw people die, and why I saw so many animals die. And why did people go to hospitals and was taken away and removed sort of from their family and I used to ask my mom that a lot, like, why can't, like, my grandfather was the first person that died close to me. And I was like, how come he has to die in the hospital? I don't understand. The dogs are dying here and whatever. So I think when we look at death and for me, animals and nature teach me more than books or science or anything I've ever been involved with. It's embracing, it's understanding death. And I think that we're so removed from it. Like, we see it so much. We see it all the time in movies and television and Netflix and whatever. We see death all the time. But we as a society in North America, I'm just going to say, we are really removed from it, from being with our family and our loved ones when they die often. So I think what animals did for me is I was really afraid of death, and learning and understanding and connecting with my philosophy, which is that the physical body dies, but the soul doesn't, and the soul remains. That was a big part of my practice at my clinic. So rather than, and this is no judgment, but what I would often see is people dropping their animals off to vets to be euthanized, and sort of sometimes being discouraged not to stay with them, right? To not be in the room because it was too upsetting, or it's too upsetting to the animals, or don't bring your children in because your children are going to be too upset, or don't euthanize your dog at home or your cat at home, because it's an emotional perspective. Like, I found that it was going down that route of removal with death. So the first thing that I did, and everyone's going to probably talk here about the different spiritual part of it, but from my perspective at my clinic, in 1997, I had a euthanasia room, and that room was delegated to animals so that that room didn't have to be interrupted on any level, and the pet parents could stay with their animals and process that part of the death process, or stay with them, and it not be like a rushed sort of procedure almost. So that was really encouraged. More than even that, we did a lot of house calls so that so that other animals could be around it, so the animals understood, like if there was a whatever animals or children or whatever, that it was a really important part. It was as important as living. So leaving was as important as living, and that process around it. So many times we wound up going in and euthanizing animals at home and then leaving them there. And people would be like, you can't leave them there. You have to automatically take them out of the house. Like it's almost like they think that they're going to implode if they're dead, if they die. They're gonna, swell all up and explode or decay within a matter of 24 hours or something. They really don't understand. And we encourage people to leave their animals in their normal beds, right, for just that process to happen, and the other animals that could be around them. So right now with COVID and stuff, I think that what I can contribute maybe with this conversation is that I don't know what the rules and regulations is with every single country, but our go-to, if we couldn't go home and the animals, we often euthanized animals and dogs, not cats, but dogs in cars. So we would go out and we would put the animal to sleep in the car because often it was their second home. So the other thing I don't think people talk about enough is the preparation of death. So ideally, from a holistic or homeopathic perspective, we supported them with remedies to die at home. So our first goal was that they would pass on their own and not even have to be euthanized. But I find that asking people to think about, not to just make a fast decision, but it's as important to, when you're getting a puppy or a kitten, or you're preparing for a child to come into the house, you're in preparation for this sort of happy time. I think it's important to be in preparation for a time so that you can prepare it as a leaving, but staying connected, than the hardcore cut and it's done, they're gone, just do it, like I find for my clients, it was really, really supportive for them to make a decision prior to what's going on. So if an animal's diagnosed with cancer, like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What kind of life do you want your animal to have? And what kind of death do you want your animal to have? So to prepare it in a different way than just around sadness and grief and trauma. And, there's so much you can do with the whole family, like giving them, aconite to help with the fear around it. Just be a little more prepared and try to be in that space where it's looked at in a different way, because we look at it in such a scary way that we disconnect from it. And that is no judgment, because I was terrified. It's still something to this day that I struggle with. I have a rescue farm, right? So I see a lot of death, and I have to make those decisions a lot. And I wouldn't have been prepared for what I have to be prepared for now if I didn't have my clinic supporting people in that process. So I guess the very end thing I want to say is it's in my personal belief, it's not an end. It's not an end. And animals of anything, we are so connected to them energetically that it's important to keep that energy, especially if you've just had a diagnosis, if people are watching this and they've just found out their animal has cancer or whatever. Spend that time connecting. Talk to your dog, your cat, your horse, your potbelly pig, whatever it is. How are you going to show up for me? Are you going to show up as a bird? Are you going to show up just in the air? Are you going to show up as a star? How am I going to feel you? Right? That's something that I do with these guys all the time, all the animals that I have in contact with. So I guess be prepared, try to understand it the best that fits with your philosophy, because it's only going to be your philosophy. What Dr. Fishburne, what anybody thinks here, what's nice is that then you can marry that with what feels true to your heart, because none of us are gonna, not in my opinion, none of us have the exact right opinion or the exact right advice, and maybe it's going to be a collage of everybody's, but what feels right for you, and think about it now so that you can flow into it rather than hit it like a train.
Thanks, Julie. Isla, what do you think?
Thank you so much, Julianne. It's beautiful. Yeah, and what I'm going to share is, again, just like we are all part of the collective, right? So this is just from my perspective, my experiences, what I have seen, what I've observed, what I witnessed is there is, yeah. So from my perspective, we are taught and told so much about how to celebrate life, how to celebrate rewards, how to love life. And yet we're not taught or told how to celebrate death. And I think that is why it comes in, certainly again in our Western society at least, there are cultural societies that really honour death as much as life is honoured. It's seen as a celebration because there is no end. Like Julianne so beautifully explains that, yeah, the physical body has an expiration date, and that just goes back to earth, and then it becomes the building blocks again and creates something else. From what I know, I can see, is that the soul can never be destroyed, and I feel that's a really powerful thing to remember. The soul can never be destroyed, and so looking at it from the perspective of how can we tell ourselves that it is okay to celebrate death? Not that like, whoa, like something, an animal, a family member, someone that I love so much, a best friend has passed, is going to pass. I don't mean it from that perspective at all, but wow, how can I honour, celebrate, be in ceremony with this physical animal, this loved one that I've shared such a coexistence with physically, and to celebrate them now in spirit, to celebrate their spirit. And from that perspective, for me, what's really interesting is how we put a protocol in practice for our animals, and also how we put a protocol in practice for the animals we coexist with that may also be witnessing a family member passing. And so I always remember an experience. A friend of mine came to me to say her sister-in-law was dying. Her sister-in-law was dying with cancer. She was dying at home, and all the family were together. All the family were showing up, were speaking to her, reading to her, being in the same room, and they kept kind of shoving the dog out, like the dog was kept in another room. And she's like, the dog's just looking more and more depressed and more forlorn. Do you think she has an understanding of what's going on? And I'm like, oh yeah, of course she does. She's a family member. And I think this is what I really want people to understand, that whether it is, like Julianne says, a pot-bellied pig, your dog, your cat, your horse, whether it's a fish, whether it's a gerbil, whether it's anything and everything that is alive, has a soul, has a spirit, whether it's a blade of grass, whether it's a leaf on a tree, whether it's a stone, whether it's the waters, everything has a spirit that we intuitively can connect to in whatever way that may be. And even if we're just like, we don't think we can do it, like we can. And that's just when you will start to receive signs and a knowing. And so, for example, in this case with the family member that was passing, I just said, look, why don't we just connect with the dog and see why the dog is sad? Is a dog upset because the family member is passing? Is a dog upset for other reasons? And the dog gave this most incredible share, and within it was, yeah, I'm like, guys, I'm a family member. I've been with you all since a puppy. Like, I've been in every holiday, every season, every special occasion, every celebration, every ceremony. Why'd you keep closing the door on me here, guys? Like, this is really upsetting me. And so from that perspective, something I want to share, because often we try and safeguard our animal, which is what we, of course we want to do, but without maybe considering the animal's feelings of what does the animal need that coexists with us, because they are our family. They witness everything. They witness us when we're babies, if we have the animal since we're a toddler. They witness our first steps, our first words, us kind of graduating in the UK it's A levels and going off to university and. So I think that's a really valued point to look at, like, how do we support our animals when they are still living with others, but there is a member of the family, whether it is another animal or a non-human animal or human, that is going to be passing. And with that as well, there is this, because we can always remain connected to our animals, and this is what I'm going to share in the meditation later on this evening my time, could be morning or afternoon, is this honouring. Is like we learn everything that we can. We prepare ourselves. Okay, I'm getting a puppy, I'm getting a rescue dog. What do I need to know about this puppy? What do I need to know about this rescue dog? What kind of techniques do I need to learn? What professional do I need to go to? What equipment do I need to buy? What food do I need to feed? Everything, we get everything in preparation for our dog, and constantly evolving with that from how we coexist with them as the dog ages. But yeah, again, when it comes to death, it's almost like, oh yeah, and there's death and we don't talk about it, and we kind of just put it to one side. And that can often be why grief comes at such a shock, because again, we don't hold it in a way to celebrate. We don't hold it in a way to honor, and that's what passing is. It's honoring the life, this beautiful, incredible time together that we've had with this physical being, and how we then start to connect, communicate, and stay in contact with that animal once it's out of its physical body. And so there's a whole load of preparation that we can do in terms of, like Julianne says, which I really agree with, because it's something that I also do with clients and guardians with dogs. I'm really kind of more focused on the dogs, but we can ask the animal, hey, it's nearly time for you to pass, or what is it that you would like when it is your time to pass. So I don't know if maybe you saw Juncker, one of my dogs, just came in, and she's 13 and a half now, and her life energy is failing. That's okay, she's 13 and a half, her spirit is so strong, her soul is so strong, but yeah, her life energy is failing. She's maybe now 80%. And even one of the things, so recently, I mean, she's not ready to pass, I know that, but recently she started to change her behaviour, where she was being quite distant with me. And I was like, okay, have I annoyed her? That could be true. We can annoy our animals. That's okay. I'm like, have I annoyed her? Have I missed something? Like, why is there this distance? And so I just connected with her, like, hey, like, what is it that you need? I've just noticed this change in our interaction. And again, like, our animals are always so connected to us. It's not necessarily, like, they're always forgiving, and they have, you know what is really important to express with our non-human animals that we coexist with? They have no ego, so they have no judgment, they have no criticism, they have no shame or blame. It just is. It's like, hey, you've asked me a question, this is what I'm sharing. And how she expressed it and explained to me was, there'll be a time when we are physically no longer together, so all I'm doing is preparing you for when we're no longer physically together. I'm giving you the distance so you knows what it feels like when we no longer have this interaction. And I was like, oh, that is just so beautiful and profound. And so our dogs are also kind of have these opportunities and a knowing to have a decision, to have a choice. And I think we kind of are not, we're talking about consciousness, and it's conscious in all ways. And so everything that is alive also has an intelligence. It's different to like the human intelligence of the brain, but we all have a soul, we all have a heart, and a way of feeling and sensing and knowing. And so we can connect to our animals, or you can work with a professional that knows how to support you and guide you in connecting to your animal, so your animal can share with you exactly what they need. Maybe what song they want to hear, what ceremony they want, what food they want, before they pass, during their passing, and also after they are passing. And there's some really simple techniques that we can do to support an animal that has already passed, to make that passing easier. And I'm not saying the passing is painful, it's not at all, but the passing can be easier, where we have this acceptance of saying to animals like, wow, I really love you, I really wish you were still here, but there is an acceptance that you are ready to go, you are no longer part of your physical body, because that can also make it just It can make the soul of the animal just hang around for a little bit longer. And if we're really honouring our animal, it's understanding what, again, like time and time again when we coexist with our animal, of what is it that they need, what is it that they need, and also how we support ourselves in that perspective of what is it that we need to grieve and allow that kind of grief and loss and the pain of that to be released. And so I always remember when our other wolf dog, Cola, he passed two years ago. And that's exactly what I did with him. I just sat in a ceremony with him, and I've done this with other clients as well, where we sit in ceremony with the dog and we're just like, just share, tell us what it is that you need. There is some beautiful meditation that you can do without even having to go into the vet practice, like Julianne explained, with depending on what your vet practice protocols are with the pandemic and with COVID. But it's the physical body that's limited. The physical body is limited in where it can go, but the soul body never is. So you can literally take yourself to the vet practice if that's where your dog is going to be. And there's some beautiful grounding meditations that you can do, some beautiful meditations and protecting that space as your animal is going to pass. And that's kind of what we did with Cola. I just connect with him and said, just like, son, I'd love you to hang around for a couple of more days. I'd love you to hang around for a couple of more years. What is it that you need? It could be, you know, I have had this before, and I've had to share with clients, really just, we've sat in a really just open space and a held space and a heard space where we are all hearing, and there was a beautiful saying of, we are hearing to listen rather than to respond. And I only saw it the other day and I was like, that is so important, because sometimes we listen to go, well, I'm going to reply, but it's like, no, let's open up to hear, just to listen. Because sometimes we know that our animal is unwell, and so we kind of try this and try that and kind of keep them going because we are trying these different protocols, which is not right or wrong. It's not from a place of judgment. It is what it is. But often when I connect with the animal, it's just like, do you know what? I just want to be with my family. These things are lovely and they're great, but they're just giving me days or months. And do you know what? It's taking our time away when we're getting in the car and we're going here, then I feel a bit sick, or I need to sleep. Just want to be with the family. And that's kind of what Cola communicated with me. That's what he shared, was like, do you know what, ma'am, like, I've had an amazing life, been surrounded in love, but I'm done now. I'm just done. I'm ready. And my vet practice, they're beautiful. They are purely conventional, but they are so open. They're so open to all manner of different techniques, protocols, whatever you want to try. So I did a ceremony in the vet practice for Cola, which was really beautiful. And with that, he shared with me a particular chant he wanted to hear, a particular a couple of essential oils that he wanted, there was a spray that he wanted around him, there was some food that he wanted. So we really can be in this place when we're looking at, how do we celebrate the life of our animals? How do we put in practice everything that our animal needs so that they're having a good life? How we can also know that it's okay to be sad around passing, to be sad around death, knowing that, how do we work through the grief and the loss, but knowing that that is also an honouring that we can give. It's ceremony, it's a celebration, and that we can connect with our animals to receive that. There isn't anything special about it. There isn't anything like, oh well, maybe Isla can do it and I can't. If I can do it, everybody can do it. Everybody can do it. And I think that's really what I want to share. Even if it's just like, oh, I just heard a little song, or I don't know, I was thinking of my dog and yeah, maybe their time to pass. And I just got this smell of like a cheesy pie, melted tuna melt or something. Like, pay attention. This is the whole point of our sharing together at this time, of being conscious. Being conscious is being conscious of everything. So pay attention of everything that shows up, knowing and trusting that you are communicating to your animal each and every day.
Thanks, Isla. You know, you brought a tear and a bit of a gulp in my throat a few times there when I was just thinking about some of my other animals that passed. And yeah, it really hit home. So thank you for that. Dr. Josie, you know, please share what you're thinking of this.
Wow. Yeah, I have a lot to say on this. I first heard the term death doula a few years ago, and it's become more popular. And I realized that's pretty much, it's been my life path all the time, from goodness, when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, being presented with death, and the death of animals and the death of people. I had I was 5 years old, and I was sitting on our front stoop, and a car drove by in this suburban neighborhood, and there was a thump, and the man brought a ball of fur covered in blood. My mom had run in to go to the bathroom, and he landed this ball of fur covered in blood in front of me. And I'm this little 5-year-old girl. And he said, "Is this your kitty cat?" And and I said, "No, that's not my kitty cat. There's no kitty cat there." I was already aware it was like the fur, but the cat itself was gone. And I went on to be a biology major, and then I went on to work in animal shelters. I spent about 8 years of my life devoted to animal shelters, and I was day in, day out in that euthanasia room. So I saw a lot. I've seen probably an animal die in every different way an animal could potentially die. And I went into the one shelter I worked in. We walked in, my boyfriend at the time, and we decided we were going to go smudge the animal shelter before everybody showed up at work. And we walked in there with this is way before vet school. We walked in there with the sage, and we lit it. In the back door was a cremation room, and then there were these two huge rooms, like 40 kennels each. And normally the first person walking in the door, the dogs would just start barking and barking and barking, and we lit that sage, and the whole entire shelter got quiet. Like you could hear a pin drop in the hallway, and we just looked at each other going, "Oh man, we don't know if," and we all of the smoke concentrated in that euthanasia room. And we went and stood outside in the parking lot because people were starting up to come in for work, and we're like, "Oh shit, they're gonna think we're back there smoking pot in the animal shelter," because there's this giant cloud of sage, and you literally had to walk through it in order to get into the building. So every person coming to work that day was getting smudged with sage. But we heard like crazy screaming entity things flying out of the stack of that crematory. So it was a major clearing. But I later went on, I started doing at-home euthanasias back, 20 years ago when I started my house call practice. And being a holistic vet, you get all these cases of autoimmune disease and cancer. And so I really see my job as walking people through that disease process of their own, and, walking them hand in hand with that animal to the void, and allowing them to walk up to that void, and allowing them to let that animal go onto their journey through the veil, and be okay with that. And I think the preparation that Julianne said, it's so important. And I have a very intimate practice because it's usually me, the animal, and the client when it's at home. And so the stories that will come up, those animals, I consider the animals the healers for the people, and they're healing our fear of death because they're so in the moment. I've also studied, my spiritual path was based upon my death work. So I searched out people who could talk about what happened on the other side. And Tibetan Buddhists, they have all the teachings on the bardo and what you go through. And the Taoists talk about in acupuncture the different parts of the soul. And I found with acupuncture, you can actually, my animals that I'm treating with acupuncture on a regular basis, a lot of them will die on their own, and I never get the phone call. They will literally pass in their sleep, which is such a blessing for the people and the animal. But I've had people sit there and talk about their mother's death, talk about another traumatic death they had to witness. They bring up all of these wounds around their animal's death, but it's pretty much holding the space for that to happen in as a safe space, that it's okay to meet death. We're all going to meet death at some point in time. It's not, our society has relegated it to the nursing home and has relegated it to the hospital. But I've had amazing experiences in hospital rooms with people as well. I mean, my father's death, I was pretty much in meditation when he actually died, and I saw the way the Tibetans describe the energy and the elements dissolving and exploding in his heart center and him leaving energetically. And I ran over, I was across the street in a hotel room, and I ran to the hospital room, and I'm running to get into his hospital room while everybody else is running out because there's a dead body in there. Oh my God, we have to run away from the dead body. But one of the other things I've learned, I've kind of collected over the years, all of our traditional societies, whether it's European, whether it's Chinese, whether it's African, they all have rituals around death and how to care for the dying at home and how to care for the body when the person has left. And I was initiated into a Peruvian ritual of literally unlocking the chakras. And I was able to go in. Everybody left my father's room, and I was able to be with him alone. And I was able to do this ceremony of unhooking his chakras. And I yelled at my niece. There was this whole bouquet of roses in the waiting room of the hospital. I said, go grab me those roses. And I literally laid roses out all in like a grid over his whole body and did my prayers and did my prostrations and had this incredible closing. And I was, in the middle of a hospital. But I think it's so important. There's more conversations that we're having about it in terms of death rights and actually talking to our own family members about how we want to die, if at all possible. I mean, I think that's so vitally important. And more people are being allowed to die at home as well. But our animals, they have so much to teach us. They're not afraid of death. And if we look at this whole situation with COVID is really the powers that be playing on our fear of death. And I think that's a big wake-up call for all of us from a spiritual perspective. And it's kind of sent us to our rooms to really hopefully go inward and do some inner work and really think about one of my spiritual teachers, a Tibetan Lama. His first teaching he gave me was to sit 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes a night and think about my own death and think about the death of my loved ones, and to start your day with that, and like Crazy Horse Lakota, they would say they would go off to battle or whatever they were doing, saying today is a good day to die. And if we live from that, we're not going to waste our life. We're going to go out there and we're going to do what's important for us, for all of the living things around us, for our ecosystem, for our world, for our family, for the 7 generations ahead of us. What are we leaving them? So we can sit and mope and do this whole thing, or we can say, tomorrow I could be dead. What am I going to do today? So that's where I'm going to leave it. And I think every single animal that's crossed my path. I was actually, right before this call, a woman called me up and I gave her instructions. She's been racing she has like a wolf type dog, and she's been running it from clinic to clinic, and they put it on this drug and that drug made it vomit and this drug gave it diarrhea and it can't get up and it stopped eating. And I said, just stop. It's okay to stop. And I said, I want you to take the next 3 days and I want you to push everything else away. And I want you to spend that 3 days with your dog, because that's your soul dog. And yes, he's been with you many lifetimes. So you need to be with him. If that's curling up on the floor with him, if that's talking to him, if that's crying with him, if that's giving him permission, if that's loving him, if that's smelling his fur, if that's, dropping water in his mouth to keep it moist. It's holding vigil, and we have forgotten how to do that. We're scared. We're too scared. But I think that is the missing part out of grief, is holding vigil with that loved one who's getting ready to go on the journey of a lifetime, and we can be there for them. So.
Thanks, Dr. Josie.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. Dr. Emily, I know you've got much to say about this as
Oh,
well.
you know, it's interesting. I do and I don't. I mean, I feel like I do. I have a lot to say, but I also literally, when Julianne started talking, I was like, I was unprepared to take notes, and I literally like got up and ran away and like found myself a notebook and a pen, and I was like, I'm sitting here like, yes, absolutely, yes, I need to write this down. I sort of feel like maybe I haven't processed this enough to figure out how I need to speak to other people about it. And so maybe I think I'm actually think I'm just going to tell a story because it's fairly fresh in my mind, and it was a very different experience. So juxtapose it. So what my incredibly long intro did not actually mention that I currently am working in an emergency practice full time, and death is part of what I do. Sometimes in really traumatic ways, where everyone is trying desperately to prevent it, and sometimes it's already done by the time I'm involved, and I just have to tell people, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it's already done. It's already gone. They're not here anymore. And then sometimes it's walking them to the edge, walking them to the veil, like Josie said, and standing with them on the precipice while they let go. And sometimes it's it's holding them while their animal goes when they are not okay with it, not okay at all. And there's so much variety in it that trying to come up with how do you talk about it, it's really hard. So I think I'm going to talk about how I kind of wish it could be a little bit more, and maybe even through the eyes of my son. My son is 6 years old. This spring, he lost one of his fur friends very unexpectedly. We just called her Mama Gray because she was a gray mama cat. And she technically belonged to my neighbor, but she and Owen were really, really best friends. And she came to our house every day to play with him. And I knew there was heartbreak from the beginning because she was an outdoor cat who was only a year old and a big wanderer, and we live near a major highway. This spring, one day, my husband and actually my best friend who was visiting were on their way to the store and just saw her literally as they were pulling out of the driveway on the side of the road, and knew immediately it was her. And they called the neighbor and let him know. And my neighbor, we practically live on a commune. Side note, like we're very close. We all live on the same property. It's an old organic farm that currently no one is farming, but we all live on it. And so he has a lovely soul to him. And he also has children, and he came and collected her body and took it back to his house and waited for his children to get home from school. And I don't know exactly what process they went through, but I know that he did not immediately hide her and bury her body. He allowed his children to say goodbye to her. And that evening, after his children had had a chance, my husband Ian and I sat down with our son Owen and told him what had happened. And I'm sorry, and just held space for his grief. And of course, at the age of 6, he is really unfiltered in his emotions, and he doesn't feel like he has to hold back, and he doesn't feel like he has to hold it together, and he doesn't have to make decisions. He just feels it. And I'm so glad that my best friend just happened to be there visiting us, because she was able to sit with our other child so that Ian and I could really just give him the space to feel that. And so one of the things that we asked him was whether he wanted to see her. And, as a professional, I was able to give him a little bit of kind of like a what to expect. Like, she is not there anymore. Her being is not there, but her body is there. Her body will look different without life in it, but it's still her. It's not scary. And he knew, I mean, he knew he wanted to see her. I never dissuade parents from allowing their children to be part of the process. And sometimes I am shocked at how parents of college students think their child can't handle the process. And I think that we need to not be protecting our children from death like that. I don't think it's healthy at all. I think we need to allow our children to be with these things. And so I was 39 and a half weeks pregnant at the time, but Ian took Owen over to our neighbor's house and sat with him, and while he said goodbye to Mama Gray. And Owen, actually earlier that day, he had picked flowers, and he took the flowers that he had picked earlier in the day and he arranged them on her, and he gave her a kiss. He told her he loved her, and he sat with her for some time, and he sang to her. And then when he came home, he told me about it, and he said that he wanted, I could tell he wanted more, but he didn't know the right words. And I said, do you want to talk to her, or do you want to pray maybe? And he said yes, that's what he wanted, but he didn't know how to do it. And he at the time, and really still, he loves to draw, and so I suggested that he make a drawing for her, and then that we take it outside and use a candles to help guide her soul into over the rainbow bridges. I did use that term for him. That resonated with him because we tell birth stories using the rainbow bridge too at our house. So birth and death are the bridge. That really resonated with him. He's used to me using candles, and he's comfortable with art as a medium. And so he made 2 drawings. One was for him to remember her, and he kept it. And the other was for her as a way of remembering her alive and remembering her life. And we took it outside, and we sat down on the patio. We lit a candle for her, and we told her that it was okay to go, and we still loved her, and that we would call on her from time to time when we missed her the most. And Ian, he specifically invited her to go on adventures with him in his dreams because she wants to go on adventures. That's what she did. He for the next couple of days, he would still cry a little bit. And but really it was the he didn't hold on to that. And here we are about 7 months later, and he occasionally brings her up, but it is never in the context of her death. It is in the context of who she is, like Mama Gray would love to go on that adventure with me, for instance, was something that he would say. And so, watching, I mean, he's a fresh soul. He's only 6 years old, but he moves through these phases of emotion in such a beautiful, unrestrained way that it just reminds me, when we allow ourselves to do that, when we allow ourselves to just really go into it in an unfiltered way, where we're not putting on a show for other people, we're not trying to be strong, we're not trying to hold it together, and then we take any of our other emotional and mental health coping strategies, all of the tools that we possibly can find, art and song and ritual and ceremony and aesthetics and connecting to people around us and using our bodies and our voices and our imaginations, art, I mean, all of it. You just bring it all in, and then you have this integrated experience that allows your body and your mind and your soul to all process what's going on. And so it was such an incredible my children are always teachers for me, but that was such a deep, rich lesson for me And so I've then taken that and tried to more overtly bring that into my practice. And of course, every situation is different, but I make a conscious practice of giving people permission to do things, because they're not, I mean, most of them have never quite been through the experience of an emergency veterinarian euthanasia or death of an animal. And there's some decisions that have to be made, and there's some practical parts, but I really consciously give them choices. And I tell people, you have as long as you need prior to and after. This room is yours for as long as you need it. I sit with them and I witness their emotions. I specifically leave space for that. And some people are private people and they don't know me. And so they don't want me there. And other people really, really, really want you there. And they want to talk to you about what's coming up for them. And they need that processing space. And other people need to be given permission. I mean, people apologize to me for crying at the death of their animal all the time. I mean, literally almost every time. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, and I mean, I really make a point of being firm about it. And I look at them and say, it is okay to have emotions right now. It is okay to feel this deeply. This is very difficult. This is hard stuff you are doing. It's okay to have feelings about it. And almost every time people are like, yeah, oh yeah, right. Duh, I'm allowed to have feelings about this. Like, and so I will say that it has, it's been a reminder to me, and also just brought another layer into my clinical practice of making sure that I overtly give people enough permission and space to do what they need to do. And I always give them as many choices as I possibly can. You know, everything doesn't have to be immediately right now, right here under these circumstances. And I think that that's something that even once the euthanasia decision is made, or once this animal is dying acknowledgement has been made, there are still choices that, and I think that anytime we can give people those choices, it allows them to be part of it. And when they're part of it, they're less likely to be traumatized by it and more likely to be able to integrate it into themselves. Okay.
Thanks,
I
Dr.
think that's kind of what I've got for the moment.
No, thank you for sharing that, because, you know, the story of your son, I think, resonates with everyone who's going through death, especially the very, very first time, you know. And yeah, thank you for sharing that story, that personal story. It means a lot. Like today, death is a very sensitive topic, but I think it's so important that we talk about it. Stephanie, you're a pet parent. Would you like to share your thoughts on, you know, you've listened to these 4 amazing ladies.
I'm grateful that there's people out there like Julie, like Josie, like Emily, like Isla, that people like me can have access to, that can support us, because we are scared when these things happen. And I guess I wish that there were more people practicing the way that you all here do, that we could have access to. But I mean, this session has been incredibly powerful. Do I have any additions? No, I'm just so thankful that you were all willing to share, and I'm grateful that we have access to people like you to help us through the motions.
Love you, Steph.
Can I say one fast thing? When Stephanie said that, it reminded me that, you know, for anyone that's watching from my perspective, is that when you listen to us, for me, I'm always still learning. Like, I can say that I'm not afraid of death, and I can say all of those things, but it's always, it's practice. right? It's a constant practice because we're so bombarded with the opposite. We're so bombarded with to fear it that it's almost like when you were talking about being conscious, it's almost like it's almost for me living in the situation that I do right now. I have to be conscious about it every day. And when Josie said that, she was told to meditate on the people that have died and her own death every morning, I was sitting and I was listening to that, and I was like, that's really interesting, because that's not what we're taught, right? But I had an experience that I just wanted to quickly say with one of the very loves of my life, animals, my horse. And for me, he was a very strong spirit animal for me that moved me literally 11,000 kilometers to come to a farm so that he could actually have grass. And from the second I met that horse, I had this incredible bond, like phenomenal bond. And the same way you got upset, I feel the same way. I landed here for him in Nova Scotia on this big massive farm. And literally like 4 weeks after we got here, he was a rescue. He couldn't stand up. And after a while, we were finally figured out that he had equine protozoal myeloencephalitis. And I was so determined this horse was not going to die that I basically spent every waking hour talking to every single veterinarian I could find, every single spiritual I just focused my entire life with this horse. And at the same time, I was separating from my partner, and I was terrified that something would happen, that I wanted my partner to leave, and we knew that it was the best thing to do. But Joseph was a big draft horse and he would fall over. And once we had to take a chainsaw the side of the barn down to get him up because he fell over. And I knew I couldn't do that on my own. So I was seeing a shaman at the time, and I said to her, I'm so torn. I don't know what to do. And she said, well, how's Joseph doing? And I'm like, he's doing great. He's doing actually very well, but I don't want my partner to leave because I'm so terrified that something's going to happen to him and I'm not going to be able to do something about it. And she said, well, maybe try not going there. And, like right now, just embrace that he's doing well and whatever. And it was quite a strong thing when I said that to him. It's like, I want him to go, but I don't want him to go because I know it's best that he goes for me. Like my partner needs to leave for me so that I remain healthy or stay healthy. But I don't want him to go because I don't want to be in this situation. And I came home, and that morning I got up and he had fallen down in the hallway, and he had no intentions of getting back up. And almost instantly I knew he was leaving because of me. Like he wasn't physically ready to go, but he knew he had to go so that I would be okay. But what he taught me, like even in that moment, I'm like, don't go. I mean, I'm gonna be okay. Like my partner can go. I change my mind. Get up, And but what I realized is that I spent 3 years of my life not with him. I didn't stay with him. And he taught me in that moment that all I had to do is get off my stupid computer and stop trying to save his life because I was so terrified that he was going to die, and just be with him for whatever, like the time that he could be. And then I had an older dog, Della, and literally I said to her, no, I'm not doing this. I spent the rest of that year so connected with her. And I think what I'm trying to say to everybody is that we live in such a disconnected life. We live on computers and cell phones and media and everything. And that I've seen so many personally in my own vet hospital of people chasing the fear of death, like if not, they're doing whatever they need to do so that their animal doesn't die, that they miss their life because of that fear. So I think that's the only thing that I wanted to leave with, is that they aren't afraid. They aren't, like, they're so not afraid to die that they'll go. Like, that's exactly what he did. I've never experienced anything like that in my whole life. And it was so incredibly clear for me that I was up here and he was down there, and he knew exactly what I was thinking. Like you said, Isla, always say, like, you can be miles away from your animals and you're still connected. So when I actually verbally expressed that, he was able to understand that and go. So the last thing that I would just want to say is don't leave your animal before it dies, just because you're leaving them by chasing whatever you can do for them not to die. You're actually leaving them before they die. So just trying to stay connected with that, I think, is really, really important.
Thanks, Julie, for sharing that. I want to welcome Laurie and Talita to our circle. We are actually discussing how to view death consciously, and it's actually been quite an intense past hour. But there will be a recording that we can share later with everyone. Would anyone, I'd like to open up to the floor if anyone would like to share any more thoughts. Yeah, Cara.
Yeah, I came in late, but I really appreciate what I listened to. So thank you to everybody. And I currently don't have a pet, although my sons do. But when I did have pets and they were having challenges or issues, I would ask them, did they want to remain here, or were they ready to cross over? And however I felt I got information back, I would act accordingly. So that vigil is really, really important, to make that sacred space and to give that sacredness to your pet's life. So anyway, I appreciate everything that I heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. Anyone else would like to share any more final thoughts before I hand over the last session, the end of our journey here, to Isla, who will lead us on a meditation? Yeah, Emily?
I do have one. I have a comment. And this particular forum is definitely kind of focused on people who love animals and how they can bring a level of consciousness to it. But I think that we, as veterinarians and professionals, also need to kind of remember that we need to take care of ourselves for the kind of, and I don't want to dwell on it too long, but I feel like it would be a little bit remiss if in this veterinary profession, although really all animal caregiving professions, but the veterinary profession in particular at this moment has such an incredibly unhealthy relationship with mental health and self-awareness and understanding where what happens to your patients and your clients is separate from yourselves, and you do not have to empathize to the point that you are experiencing their pain at every moment. We need to create death rituals for ourselves. That is something that is new to me. No one ever taught me that. And it was only when I was in ER medicine and being pushed and pushed and pushed to the point of feeling like I was going to break that I realized I had to find a way to do this. And I didn't formalize anything until, a little over a year ago, for what I actually had some coping strategies for. And I had tried for another year before that to kind of reach out in some veterinary online forums and stuff and say, what are you guys doing to deal with this? I don't even understand how we're supposed to handle this. And I got a little bit of feedback here and there, but in the end, I found that I had to do it for myself, and I had to find ways to deal with it, both in the moment as well as sort of in bigger ways from time to time, like almost like a cleansing ceremony, like Josie was talking about. I need to smudge my soul from time to time. So I think anybody in rescue work, anybody in shelter work, anybody dealing with animal behavior, anybody dealing with animal health, even just people who have a lot of animals in their lives that they care for, we need to develop practices for ourselves too, to let these things sort of pass through us instead of staying in us, and just because we have to keep living, and our living keeps them alive. We can't die with them. And so I think we need to make sure that we are okay so that they can be okay.
I think a lot of that has to do with, as professionals, as medical professionals, and in our Western society, we have removed spirit. We have like taken spirit. I'm sure Isla will agree with me on this. We have removed spirit, and that's what is missing. I think after I've euthanized thousands of animals in a shelter, and that's what drove me to my spiritual work and diving into those practices and meditation. And I mean, I have all different kinds of practices, Bardo practices, 10-day retreats, really going into that for myself. And without, death is a spiritual experience. It may be physical, but we're talking about, we've left out that whole spiritual component of it. And that's where the healing comes from. And you can't, you turn it into a clinical thing, and there's this emotional psycho-spiritual aspect that's just bottled up, and that's why, I mean, veterinarians are killing themselves, and it's really, really sad. So I think people are afraid to talk about it. It's too woo-woo, it's too this, it's too that. No, it's not. It is a part of us as a human being living on this planet Gaia, where the trees are alive and have spirits, where the rivers have spirits, where the oceans have spirits, just like Isla says, where the flowers have spirits, where our animals have spirits, and we are not isolated from that. We have got to get back into reconnection with that to heal on so many levels before that planet kicks us off. It's working hard to kick us off right now. So that's just my take on the whole thing. And we need to open that up in our profession, and that's why I'm part of my thing of having this online community where people, what happens in there stays in there, and anybody's welcome to come in there and explore that and explore where they're going with that. So,
well, I wanted to thank Emily for actually saying that, because
yes.
I've experienced that firsthand with a really incredible colleague taking his own life, a veterinarian in Vancouver, and I think that I think when you said about the science, I think that's kind of what happens, right? It's like you're so conditioned to only project and educate what is science-based, and it's hard to do both, right? It's really hard to do both. And, just even from a holistic perspective, to get outside the box is hard. But then you take it one step farther from conventional to holistic to spiritual. It's a very much broader jump. And I don't think we're supported to do that, and I think that's really important what Emily said, because what Stephanie said is about how grateful she is. There isn't a lot of support in that community for that. And I think that's an important, I think I'm hoping with the amount of you know, depression and stuff in the industry, that it does somehow, you know, have a trickle down effect. You know, maybe it's part of the next course. Emily, there you go. For veterinary practitioners to, maybe someone has to have a course for that. Like some, you know, there's acupuncture courses, or chiropractic courses. There's all of these courses. Well, what about a course to help our, you know, open up that spiritual part of practice and with ourselves? I think I'm really happy that you said that, because it's not talked about a lot, and it's a really big problem.
Okay. Wow. I want to thank everyone for making the time to come today. Like I said, we basically, I'm in Singapore. We've got ladies in Canada and the UK, in the United States. So we are crossing several time zones here. And I just want to thank everyone for making the time to come. This topic is something that I think all of us agree it's such an important topic that no one really talks about. It's like so taboo and so sensitive. And I really appreciate, you know, everyone sharing their thoughts, you know, and I hope that we can continue a conversation, you know, to encourage people not to view death in such a negative way, you know, to embrace it as part of the life cycle, you know, as part of being part of the universe, you know, because it's physically, it's really difficult as a pet parent, as a human being, when we lose someone. But if we could have a course like what Julie and Emily were saying, you know, to guide us in how to deal with that. And I love the fact that, you know, Emily's son was, you know, actually in a way guiding us in how we should view and deal with death, and celebrate the life of Mother Grey. So I wanna hand over the floor to Isla now, who's going to lead us into a closing meditation circle to help us release whatever we have here in a positive way. So Isla, thank you.
Thank you, Amrys.
So I want to thank everyone for making the time today. It's I hope we will be able to continue more topics like this. And we'll sit with whatever that was discussed today and think about it. But truly, Julianne Lee, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Dr. Isla Fishburn from the UK, thank you. Dr. Josie Berg, thank you. Dr. Emily, thank you so much. Love to your family and your little boy for guiding us today. It was really, really special. Thank you. And I want to thank Stephanie, Cara, and Talita. I mean, thank you for joining us with this circle tonight. Thank you. So we'll meet again in 1 month's time. What should we talk about then? Let me think about it.
Amrys, thank you for all your work.
No, the universe guided us today. I'm just a facilitator. Everything that's been shared is, you know, all of you sharing today, and I just feel really blessed to be able to participate in this session. So thank you, everyone, and have a good day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world tonight.
Wow, I'm so thankful and grateful that you took the time to listen to this podcast. It would mean the world to me if you could subscribe, download, rate, review, and share this with others whom you care about that may enjoy it as well. Thank you, and remember to be kind to yourself and others. Have a awesome day, everyone.